Inspiration for today's episode of Cinema Sounds and Secrets comes from Terry Malloy, courtesy of On the Waterfront.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it.
Welcome to Cinema Sounds and Secrets, the podcast for anyone who loves movies. I'm your host, Janet Doolin-Jones. Known as the King of Cool, who else but Steve McQueen, the iconic man's man from the 60s and 70s, broke into a bank while wooing the glam Faye Dunaway, got locked up with Dustin Hoffman, and made the great escape on a classic Triumph motorcycle dressed up as a BMW. And there is someone I know who looks great on a motorcycle just as much. And that's my producer and wingman, actor and manly cinephile, John Schwab. So let's go to the movies. So our third show is very special because it is all about one person.
Okay.
And the person was known as the King of Cool.
Okay. All right.
And he did have a few other nicknames, but his legendary nickname was the King of Cool. He rode motorcycles.
Oh, okay.
He was a real man's man.
Yeah.
His name was Steve McQueen.
I knew as soon as you said motorcycles.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So...
okay.
The episode today is The Mighty McQueen.
Nice.
I felt that it would be fun to just dip into his really great movies from the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay.
And it's, again, another mid-century figure with a very different take from our last visit to the comedy of Blake Edwards or the musicality or fantasy of Superman and Breakfast at Tiffany's. We now are going into serious guy stuff.
Yeah, guys, I like
guy stuff with great directors, great casts.
I mean, and great careers. Come on.
A lot of career. Yes, all of them. So our first movie is... It really is one of my favorites, The Thomas Crown Affair.
Original Thomas Crown Affair. Wow.
1968.
Oh, Eddie, I'd like you to meet Thomas Crown. Mr. Crown, Lieutenant Eddie Malone, criminal investigation.
I'm not going to say a thing until I talk to my lawyer. How do you do?
He's not going to say a thing until he sees his lawyer. Hey, that's pretty good.
Shall we go?
Good night.
Good night.
Say good night to Irwin, dear.
Good night, Erwin, dear.
Good night, Irwin, dear. That's good.
There are so many things to say about this movie, but I'm going to start a little bit with our subject, Mr. McQueen,
okay.
Steve McQueen. He was raised in the Midwest, in Missouri. During the Depression, his father deserted his mother with a little baby, and she was probably an alcoholic. She left him with her parents for a while. He was dyslexic and partially deaf from an ear infection as a little child. He went to live with his mother and her new vicious brute of a husband when he was 9 years old. And he finally ran away from home at the age of 14. Ugh. And they found him and sent him to Chino School for Boys, which was a horrible reform prison, basically.
I mean, who likes Chinos anyway, you know?
And he got out of Chino and joined the Navy. So, this is a person who never had a childhood, who was never really loved or taken care of. And he left the Navy and ended up in New York City and stumbled into an acting course by Sandy Meisner.
Right.
At the Playhouse.
What a lucky man.
And it transformed him into a great actor. He would make money racing motorcycles up in the north in New York, upstate New York. So he that was how he paid for his acting school. His first big role was probably in Wanted Dead or Alive, this TV show.
Yeah.
But his big movie break was a sci-fi flick called The Blob.
Oh my God. That's the one you watch like when it's when
You're 6.
You're 6.
And you're like, The
Oh
Blob.
my Lord.
I mean, really, talk about a post-atomic age sci-fi movie. So he was in The Blob in 1958, and by then he had the nicknames were Bandito, the King of Cool, which I've already said, Mac, and McHugh. And after he did The Blob, he was offered dozens of movies.
Yeah.
Because there was just nobody like him.
No. The camera loved him.
Camera loved him.
Literally loved him.
Loved him. And it was like he could do no wrong on film. So in this wonderful film that he would come to do in 1968, starred himself, Faye Dunaway, who had just done Bonnie and Clyde and got cast off of Bonnie and Clyde, and Biff McGuire, Jack Weston. And it was really about a very rich man who is a bored banker, who decides that he wants to pull off heists, and he's good at it, and he hires a team and gets away with it, or so he thinks. And they eventually send this incredibly brilliant insurance investigator, played by Faye Dunaway, who is cool and icy and a master detective. So she was really one of the first, if you think about women of agency in a movie.
Yeah.
So it was, and sexy.
I investigate.
Anything in particular?
The bank, Mr. Crown. The capers, sir. You don't expect us to take the loss of over $2 million lying down, do you?
It's an interesting picture. Pays well, though, huh?
Depends on the return.
Sort of an American-type headhunter.
You could put it that way, yes.
And whose head are you after?
Yours.
Mine.
Yours.
Michelle Legrand with Alan and Marilyn Bergman did the music and lyrics for Windmills of Your Mind, which was recorded by Noel Harrison, Rex Harrison's son.
All right.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yes, and Noel Harrison was also the boy from Uncle in The Girl from Uncle. Because you need to know these things in life. It's what gets you through.
Exactly. It helps you win pub quizzes.
And ace the SATs.
Yes.
Lie.
Round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on a never spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind, like a tunnel that you follow.
So there's so many wonderful things about this film. It is gorgeous. It is stylish. It really was the first, and maybe it's the only stylish heist movie ever.
Yeah.
Where everyone looked good, even while they were robbing the bank. And when they did rob the bank in Boston, it was shot in Boston on location, they didn't have permission to really shoot there. So they just, the banker finally said, well, you can shoot. So they just brought in like the cameras and hid everything.
Right.
And they shot the bank robbery. So the staff knew it was a fake. Yeah. But the patrons didn't.
Couldn't do that these days.
No.
You'd have one dead, previous, before his time, Steve McQueen.
Yes. No, it was a multiple image frames, Haskell Wexler. really at the top of his young creative game, was the DP. And
was he any relation to Norman?
To Norman Waxler?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if Hacksaw is related to him. That is a question I don't
Oh.
have an answer to. Oh no.
Listen, don't even start asking me questions, Janet.
Yes. And McQueen was not the first choice of Norman Jewison.
Oh, here we go.
And he'd done the Cincinnati Kid with McQueen, and he really lobbied hard for the part, and partly because Jewison wasn't sure he could play off the elegance. You know, could he pull the elegant? Could he play this elegant man, this guy? And of course he did. And you know, the movie is full of all this wonderful macho stuff. You know, he's playing polo and driving a dune buggy and speeding along the Massachusetts coastline, and it works.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely gorgeous. It was very, you know, it just had all this like pizzazz in it. It was very technically fun. It was the height of the 60s film. I think that in film it was, you know, the new wave had happened, and you were playing with how you were shooting and what you were doing in a film. And one of the fun things about this film is the story, and where the story came from was from the writer of the book that it was based on, and screenwriter Alan Trustman was working in a bank and was so bored and watching everything going on, and he sat at his little desk trying to come up with ways you could pull off a really great heist.
All right.
And so that's how how the story came.
Who
into
says
being.
boredom at work doesn't pay?
It does. See, it does, definitely pays. So McQueen was hired. One of the reasons he got the job is that Sean Connery had just done too Scottish, had just done You Only Live Twice, and was just exhausted from doing that film. And this is why. And then, of course, Faye Dunaway was a shoo-in for the role. Now, the editor on this movie is somebody who became a great director, Hal Ashby.
Really?
Who did Harold and Maude.
Don't even get me started on Harold and Maude.
I know.
Oh,
well, that's a whole
Lord.
nother podcast.
Listen, if it's in, I'm going to be like, I know that. Yeah, I love Harold and Maude. It's in my top 10.
But it's interesting, the movie, the original running time, I think, was 5 hours. So it's one of the reasons that Hal started putting all the split screens and doing stuff to try and use as much of the amazing footage.
It's a very, it's quite an intricate storyline, and double crossing and getting away with things and sleight of hand and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's just really, it's just a gorgeous film. It has a great ending. There are so many good scenes in this. You know, there's this sexy chess scene that I can't even play it on air because there's nothing. Yeah. It's all visual, so you have to watch the film for that. But there are some really fabulous.
You want to know how sexy this picture is? Look at the poster.
Oh.
This is I know how they got away with this poster.
I know.
Well, it's in the era of love, but it's just them kissing or about to. It looks like a hot kiss.
It is so hot, and they are so hot in it. And I mean, her hair is perfect, her nails are perfect, her clothes are perfect, and it's funny. She's in a lot of like some kind of like creamy beige stuff, but it makes her into this like golden goddess. Right. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, and they both look great. So we love this movie, and there was a sequel done, and fairly, the Pierce Brosnan one was fine.
Yep.
It was just more of a movie.
Yeah.
And this was just, you really have to see this.
Yeah.
It's an experience, and it was just how it all came together, and it's a really fun film.
I did it once. I can do it again.
You're joking.
Money's not funny.
You're crazy. It can't be done.
Why not?
I just can't.
Can't, huh? It's not the only bank. You've got Irvin, and the Scriptons are 4 more. How do you know there's only 5?
Why? true, Tommy. You don't need the money.
It's not the money. It's not the money. It's me. It's me and the system. The system.
So our next Steve McQueen film is Papillon. $1973. Yes, Franklin Schaffner.
Nice.
And it was based on the book by Henry Charret, who had escaped from Devil's Island, which was the French penal colony. And it was one of those places, you go there, you never escape. And he did.
Okay.
And he was quite a character, evidently. And
I know that, full disclosure, I'm an actor. I went up for the TV series Papillon. This is the first movie I have not seen that you have mentioned, so this is new to me.
It was a very good film. It was very popular when it came out. Steve McQueen, by this time, was the highest paid actor in the business. He made $2 million for the movie.
What? This is back in when?
73.
Wow, that's a lot of bucks.
Yes, and one of the cool things about the film is the screenwriters were Dalton Trumbo, who'd been blacklisted.
Right.
There was a film made on his life, and I was also mentored by a blacklisted screenwriter, Waldo Salt, whom I'll talk about in later podcasts. Okay. But Dalton, had been blacklisted and came back from the dead to write some great films, and this was one of them, along with Lorenzo Simple Jr. And what's fun with some of the writers, when you look at how they started, he came from the Batman TV shows.
Oh God, I love the Batman.
Would later
TV.
do
the 60s.
Three Days of the Condor. He did wrote the last Sean Connery James Bond movie, Never Say Never Again, and the horrific King Kong with Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange. So that was.
What do you mean horrific?
It's pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking.
Pretty
I'm going to go back to that 33 version, right, with the little cartoon. I mean, the little mechanical gorilla. So we have a great, it's a great team once again. So it's Schaffner, who also did Patton and Planet of the Apes, which was legendarily a great sci-fi film. The book by Charret, DP was Conan Camp, and again Jerry Goldsmith, the wonderful conductor. And now his cohorts in this movie were Dustin Hoffman, who was
nearly Superman.
It was nearly Superman, and in here he was just the little tiny friend who wears the glasses and gets them broken, and Steve McQueen, and they look after each other. It's a really lovely. It's a bromance type of story, and it's a really terrific dark film. Because they were unflinchingly honest and very graphic in how they depict the Devil's Island.
Right, yeah.
And the man was sent to Devil's Island for something he didn't do.
You're Papillon, aren't you?
Yeah.
The bastards gave you life.
Right to the end of the line. They think.
It may not be as long as you think. 40% of us will die the first year out. They gave him life, too. Kid's only 18. Look at him. No wonder he dreams. He'll never make it. But a man like you could make it. If you have enough money.
How long were you there?
9 years. Work camp, 9 years a colonist. You were outside the walls. Why didn't you run? There's no place to run to. You're out in the middle of a swamp, 1,000 miles from no place. Now, if you got a lot of money, that's a different thing. I mean, you take somebody like Degas there, back there. Louis Degas, the best counterfeiter in France. National defense bonds.
Syria, 1928.
Right. Now, if you've got money like he has, there's a chance to buy your way out.
So Hoffman's role really wasn't in the book per se. So they created it for him because he so wanted to be in the movie. And so it's so it's just this wonderful.
So Dustin Hoffman was big enough at that point. Of course he was, but to say I'd like to be in this film and we'll find something for you. Right, and so Papillon was the name of Henri Charry's character at the camp, which is the butterfly, and he was just a petty criminal and he was convicted of murder. So it just had all these wonderful elements to it. A brutal prison camp. Commandant, played by Anthony Zerbe. It's a wonderful American character actor. And at this time, Ally McGraw was Steve McQueen's girlfriend, not yet his wife, and she'd left Bob Evans. Right. Crazy Bob. Oh, I have stories about Bob. And and she said he was Charry was charming, but had a huge ego. And he did come on the set and watch them film, and he died before the film was finished, but he was on the set and got to be there. So it was kind of one of those lovely little, little side stories of the film being made. It was a huge hit. It's considered by a lot of people a great adventure movie or melodramatic friendship movie. Right. And its original budget was $4 million. It escalated to 14. Wow, that's big back then.
And the producer would have to take reels of film back to France because they were being financed through a French company and show them footage so they keep giving them money. Yeah. Yes. And there is a great scene in the movie where Hoffman and McQueen wrestle an alligator. I mean, and they really do.
No.
And what they did, yes, they wrestled it's a crocodile. So it was, and they, Vic Tayback, the character actor, was playing the guard, big, brutish-looking guy, and they wounded the crocodile by drugging it. So they had to drug it, and they had to wire its jaws shut so it wouldn't kill them while they had this crocodile fights.
Yeah, but even then. You can see Steve McQueen is super good, is a man. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. No. If you told me that you wired that jaw shut, I'd be like, I don't believe you.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I
have trust issues.
Yes, well, I would worry about that one.
Especially when it comes to crocodiles.
Yes, crocodiles are parachutes. Those are my two. Yes, two. So there's a lovely quote at the end of Papillon. Yeah, and it has an absolutely stunning score. And I even played it on the piano when I was a kid. It was just one of those pretty, beautiful melody. So Papillon, this is the quote from the movie. Papillon made it to freedom, and for the remaining years of his life, he lived a free man. This, the infamous penal system in French Guiana, did not survive him. Ha ha. Perfect for McQueen,
That's
right?
So good.
So we have now, I think, my favorite McQueen movie. As much as I love Thomas Crown, enjoyed Papillon, The Great Escape.
Oh.
Did you know that was coming?
I knew it was coming. I was like, stop teasing me. Oh.
This movie
is
so bloody good.
It's so good, and it's the reason why they play it. It's on every year at Christmas time here in the UK. Yeah. Because it's just so much brilliant. It's fun. It's fantastic.
It is. It is great. It is great. Oh. It is great, and its title fits it. It is a befitting title. This is also a 1963 film. I mean, when you start looking at the list of movies made in these years, in the 60s, it's mind-numbing.
Yeah.
There's so many good films. So this was John Sturges, director. He did Bad Day at Black Rock, if you've never seen that, which is Spencer Tracy.
That's right, yeah. Right.
Magnificent Seven.
Oh, I know.
Gunfight. I know.
The thing is, like, is that how do you not? I mean, there's so many. Yeah.
I know. Gunfight at the OK Corral. These are all fantastic. Now, the writers on this movie were, interestingly, James Clavell and W.R. Burnett and Paul Brickhill did the book, based on a true event of American, Brit, French, everyone, all in Stalag. In Germany as prisoners of war trying to escape. So the book by Paul Brickhill was written right after the war in the 50s. He wrote about his experience of them trying to escape from Stalag Luft 3 in Germany. So he was Australian. He'd been shot down over Tunisia in 1943. He was put in the camp. Now, a number of the actors in the film had been prisoners of war.
Oh, really?
Or fought in the war, yes. And I will get to that. And
what a cast!
Oh, what a cast!
Come on,
yes, okay.
It's ridiculous.
Right. Steve McQueen, James Garner, Richard Attenborough.
I've worked with him. I love him.
I loved him. He's a man. Charles Bronson.
Oh my lord.
Donald Pleasance. James Donald Ramsey. I mean,
James
it goes.
Coburn.
James Coburn.
You know?
I'm getting there. James Coburn, who had only done a TV play for Sidney Lumet, and was in his big break was The Magnificent Seven as well for James Coburn. So you have James Coburn. Yeah. James Garner had done some Doris Day movies. Yeah. You know, The Thrill of It All, Move Over Darling. He was TV's Maverick. In 1963, it was one of the biggest box office films of the year, for sure. I mean, It was such a fun movie. And if for those who don't know about the escape, this team in this one prison camp decided they were going to dig tunnels and tunnel their way to freedom. Yeah. And they actually did for a while. So Donald Pleasance, who was in the film, and if you remember, he plays a character who's losing his eyesight. And it's a beautiful, such a beautiful role. Yeah. And Donald Pleasance would often play a lot of baddies and things, but here he was a great. Yeah. He was in The Fantastic Voyage as the mean doctor. Okay, yes. So he had been a Royal Air Force.
He had those eyes.
He had those eyes. I know, and that voice. He just had a manner, but he could also be quite. And he's so lovely in this movie. You're thinking, oh, I should love him. Yeah.
We don't necessarily want to interfere. It's just that. Well, what sort of blitz were you contemplating?
Well, we sneak out at night to a spot I found near the wire, a blind spot. Then we dig straight down 3 feet, take the dirt, spread it on top so it won't make a pile, and then straight out. Ives here is a tunnel man, so he digs in front, pushes the dirt behind him, and I stash it behind me. Then we just burrow right through the dirt like a couple of moles. And then by dawn, we're under the wire, across the open space, into the woods, and gone.
So he was a Royal Air Force pilot in World War II. He was shot down. He was a POW and tortured by the Germans. When he first got to the set, he did mention to Sturges that he could offer him some advice on things in the prison camp. And Sturges, being the gruff American guy, was like,
whatever.
Just keep your opinions to yourself. I know what I'm doing. And another one of the stars, and nobody knows who it was, went over to Sturges and said, actually, he was an RAF officer. He was tortured by the Germans. He was in one of their camps. And Sturges just went, wow, okay.
You got it.
I want his technical advice and his input, and from this moment on. And I do believe that's why one of the reasons the film has so much verisimilitude.
I think maybe because they got the brotherhood, the fellowship down absolutely right, yes. And it'd be very easy to kind of go, oh, listen, we're going to isolate, and I know it's called The Great Escape, but very quickly you had to establish that, and those guys looked like they
knew
would die for each other, and it was great.
Yes, and James Garner was in the Korean War. Steve McQueen was in the Navy. Attenborough was a POW RAF gunner. Mm-hmm. Bronson had been a young coal miner.
Right.
and had severe claustrophobia and had to do those tunnel scenes.
My
right?
Lord.
So Pleasance was a prisoner of war, and then David McCallum was the other young actor in the film, along with James Coburn.
Yeah.
And David McCallum would later be the Man from U.N.C.L.E., if you remember the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Vaguely.
Right? Yeah. And so Steve McQueen wanted to do all his motorcycle stunts, and he did most of them except the really, really, really famous scene.
The jump.
The jump.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it. So his stunt guy Bud Ekins did it for him. And the squadron leader, Eric Foster, this is amazing, escaped no less than 7 times from German prisoner of war camps.
God, he was good.
Yeah, that's something. So in case you know a little bit about the book, the writer, James Clavell, a lot of people will know him more for his writing that he did. He was also in the he was a British soldier and a Japanese prisoner, and he really wrote a lot of novels about the Asian experience, like Shogun,
right,
and King Rat, and Taipan, Noble House, World War. So he became a great novelist, and he also wrote he wrote The Fly.
What?
Yes, another great side. We have The Blob and The Fly in the same podcast, and To Stir with Love. One of the great Sidney Poitier films. Yeah. So it's a little bit about the writer. And all of the movie was shot in Europe. They had to rebuild.
Did they shoot in Germany? I can't remember.
They were near Munich.
Okay, yeah.
They were near Munich. And Steve McQueen's motorcycle was a Triumph dressed up to look like a BMW. Okay. I remember that. And so we have this it is a great movie about I think brotherhood. Yeah. About becoming relying on one another and trust. Yeah. And during the movie, there are 7 different languages being spoken: English, German, French, Russian, Spanish, and Latin. And the real story is rather extraordinary. And what did happen in real life is that a number of the escapees who were rounded up were executed by the Nazis. Yeah. And it was part of the Nuremberg trials. Yes. And so it's really an extraordinary story. And one of the fun last little tidbits about the filming is that great fence that you see, that the motorcycle, was actually made of black rubber bands. And the cast and crew spent the entire filming knotting strings around the black rubber bands and building the barbed wire fence. So they were kind of like knitting the barbed wire fence throughout the filming. Yeah. And so it's all actually rubber so that no one can get hurt. You can't see it. You can't tell. You can't tell. So this is our fun with Mr. McQueen. Oh. 3 masterpieces: Thomas Crown, Papillon.
You could have gone on with Steve McQueen as well.
We could go on and on and on. Yes.
Wow. There's I just thinking about him. There are of that generation. You know, there's something about Hollywood that really just threw out a few astonishing people. You know, you talked about Faye Dunaway, and you talk about even Steve McQueen and
James Garner,
but all these guys, but even Dickie Attenborough was around before that, but Robert Redford, these guys that came up through that system then, and Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino, these guys in the '60s that just easy writers, that just churned out these legendary
films,
actors.
and films
that then
could go on and and could carry this
just
stuff.
The next one, and Bullet, and all these wonderful films.
I mean, it does make me, when I looked at the ad for the last Avengers movie, and I looked at everyone's ages, Robert Downey Jr.'s this age, and Paul Rudd's 50, and Downey's 52, and so it's 40, and this is 36, and I thought, God, what was Steve McQueen doing at 36? Yeah. And you're like, we need to do more we need, let them be men. Yeah. Let them be men. Yeah. So we can all share our Steve McQueen movies and get them going. So, and just as a last little tidbit on The Great Escape, there is a very wonderful scene where Steve McQueen is being chased on his motorcycle by the Germans.
Right.
And they go through this whole town. And if you look really close, you'll notice that the German on the motorcycle chasing Steve McQueen is Steve McQueen.
You're joking.
You know the kind of clay and gravel we've got here in the compound?
Aye?
How many feet do you think you could get through in, say, 8 hours? I could go through this dirt here like the bit on an end of an auger. But you know it's not the digging. It's the shoring up with wood and getting the dirt out. That's what you have to worry about. No, it isn't, Ives. You don't have to worry about that. Well, how are you going to get the dirt out? What do they call a mole in Scotland? A mole? Aye.
Thanks for riding along with the magical McQueen in some of his greatest roles, always outsmarting the authorities and having more courage and heart than a lion. Cinema Sounds and Secrets is a production of CSS Sounds. Original music by the composer and pianist Merv DePayer. Sumptuous sound editing by Sam Boulier. Right-hand help from the super efficient Owen Hassler, and deepest gratitude to the excellent John Schwab for his production support, love of film, and good humor. And, as always, with special thanks to Pendleton. Join me here next time when we'll jump from a cliff with two amazing cowboys and then shoot it out with one of the nastiest villains ever in any Western. Directed by an Italian maestro.
Cinema Sounds and Secrets will be back with more movie lore before you can say, it's not the money I love, it's the not having it I hate.
Me too. Hate it. But we'd love to know if you know the quote. I'm Janet Doolin-Jones. You can find out much more on our website on the films in today's podcast, along with recommendations on where to find films, on great books on cinema, special interviews with filmmakers, and more. And please send me your questions and thoughts at cinemasoundsandsecrets.com.